Hello, everyone. We are going to get started here in just a minute. We just want to allow time for everyone to join us, so we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started here in just a minute or so. We're just waiting for more people to get signed in. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christina Hurdle. I'm the Associate Director of ISSS, and I'll be moderating today's call. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started. All attendees' lines will be muted throughout the call. When we get to a question and answer, place your question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to get to all questions, and if we don't get to yours, please reach us at isss@colorado.edu. So on today's call, we have Diana Salazar, Director of International Student and Scholar Services. We have J.B. Banks, Dean of Students and Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Scott Adler, Dean of the Graduate School. Before I turn it over, I just wanted to give a general thank you to the members of the Graduate and Professional Student Government and CU Boulder Student Government for organizing this event today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Diana Salazar for just a few opening comments.
Good morning. We just wanted to welcome you today and thank you for participating. I wanted to give a little bit of information about International Student and Scholar Services. We are here to support international students and scholars in achieving their educational, research, and professional objectives at the university. We offer advising and advocacy, as well as programming and engagement. We work with campus constituents throughout the university, and we are here to serve our international students and scholars. Currently, we have about 2,200 international students on campus and about 800 international scholars. So I won't take up any more time because I know there's a lot of questions to be answered, but again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Diana. So now we'd like to open it up for question and answers. We do have several pre-submitted questions that we're going to try to address all of them today. But please feel free to enter any other questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We are prioritizing questions from our international students. Please know that all the panelists can see your questions and review them. It is also possible for us to respond to them directly or in the group question and answer. If I'm asking your question of a panelist, I don't plan on revealing your identity or using your name when I ask the question of the panelists. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started with our first question. So we had a graduate student ask this question about going back home to do field work for their studies. Basically asking when are they going to be allowed back into the field. So along with that, will the university allow me to travel home for field work? Will I be allowed back in? Does CU have a plan for supporting students whose research was delayed due to the pandemic? And who should I contact about traveling for research? I don't know, Scott, would you like to start with that and we'll have an ISSS follow-up?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And thanks for the question. I know that there's been a lot of questions about fieldwork and about international students. So the first thing to note is, and this really applies to all students doing research that requires them to be off campus, is we still need to conform to the rules regarding the return to research that came out of Rio, and they've been adapted over time. So any field work does need to conform to those instructions regarding when field work can occur, and there are a lot of limitations on this. So the first thing I would do is consult those Rio guidelines. But there are other aspects to this question. Another is if a graduate student, again, this is not necessarily an international student, is taking longer to finish, will we be extending the amount of time that they have to finish their degrees? In general, we are very receptive to extending that time limit for graduate students if they believe they are going to take longer. You just need to submit an appeal for that to the graduate school, and there's instructions on the graduate school website as to how to get an extension to that time limit. So a 1-year limit is a pretty standard thing for us to provide at this point. So that shouldn't be too much of a problem. And the other thing I'll mention with regard to that, with respect to international students, they should also check with ISSS about any visa implications that has. And Diana can answer a little bit more on that in a moment. There are some other things happening to help students with respect to their appointments or funding. Now, the funding for all graduate students in terms of their teaching appointments comes from their college and obviously through their department. Many departments are working with their own colleges to find ways to extend the appointments for graduate students beyond what they may have been guaranteed from their department. So they should talk with their graduate program advisor or their director of graduate studies about what's happening in their department with respect to extending the length for students that are taking longer to finish their degrees. As well, the graduate school, which does offer some funding through things like summer fellowships, dissertation fellowships. We have shifted around some of our priorities and have broadened the number of those kinds of fellowships that we are going to be providing this year and for the next few years. So we're looking for ways to help students either get a little bit of relief from their teaching so that they can spend a little more time doing their research, or potentially extend themselves through one of those fellowships. So we're added funding for those kinds of things at the moment. So with that, let me turn it to Diana.
Thank you, Scott. I just wanted to add, as Scott mentioned, there are entry restrictions that are applicable currently because of the pandemic, depending upon what country you are coming from. And as well, US consulates are starting to reopen, but they're not all open for visa issuance. So for your specific questions, please drop into a ISSS Zoom advising session. On the front page of our ISSS website, you'll see a link for our Zoom advising. It has hours in which we do have that available. And we have hours available in morning, during the business day, during the day, and as well in the evening. So please bring your specific questions to an ISSS advising session. As well, if you go to our website, and there is on the top right, I believe, a Spring 2021 tab. If you go to that tab, there is additional information as well about travel and in particular restrictions and visa issuance and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you both. My next question is, as far as, well, if you're not a current student, but you're interested in attending to the graduate school here at CU Boulder, what do I need to do to go to graduate school in the States? Diana, do you want to take that real quick?
Sure, the best resource for that information would be to go to there's an actual website for international admissions at CU Boulder, and it has information both for graduate and undergraduate students. If you have a very specific question, you can also email intlgrad@colorado.edu. Again, that's intlgrad@colorado.edu if you have a specific question, but the international admissions website is quite robust and hopefully can answer your question.
All right, thank you. Another one for Diana. I will be here over the summer and I'd like to work. What jobs can I apply for on campus? Can I do paid research work?
So international students that are on F1 and or J1 visas, I should say, or J1 visas, are eligible to do 40 hours of work on campus during breaks. So during winter break or summer vacation, you're eligible to work 40 hours per week on campus. So that would include research positions on campus or any other job on campus. If you have specific questions about a particular position or how it may impact your immigration status, again, please reach out to ISSS either at ISSS@colorado.edu or come to one of our drop-in advising sessions.
All right, thank you. What groups are on campus for international students? This is a question for both undergraduate and graduate students. Diana?
Yes, so the International Student and Scholar Services Office works closely and mentors CU International, as well as the ISSS committee. This year, CU International is taking a break in fall semester, but they will be back in the spring semester. And the ISSS committee has had many meetings and they've hosted quite a few events this semester and will continue to do so next semester. So those are groups that specifically work with ISSS. However, if you go to the Center for Student Involvement's website, there are over 500 different student organizations listed, and some of those have a very specific cultural focus or ethnic focus. So you can also find other groups that may be of interest to you on that website. Again, it's the Center for Student Involvement's website.
And I'll also add to that, there are a number of organizations that you can get involved in, but I'll also submit the website that is specific to what Diana was just mentioning, and that's colorado.edu/IAFS/groups-awards. Again, you can get to that, but I wanted to offer those as specific ways of getting involved.
Thank you so much. My apologies, the mute button, I swear, just keeps moving. I'm sure all of you on Zoom know how that goes. What scholarships and fellowships are available for international students? This would be for both grad and undergrad. I know ISSS has a response to that, and then I think also the graduate school.
Scott, I'll go ahead and then I'll pass it over to you. On the ISSS website, on the section for current students, there is a section called Financial Support Resources, where you can find links about specific scholarships available to international students. We do recognize that the campus has limited scholarships available for international students, and we are working to create additional scholarships in the future, but at this point, we do have what is available on our website. Sometimes doctoral students and master level students are able to obtain funding support from their academic departments, and I'll let Scott speak further about that.
Thanks, Diana. Yes, that's right. Of course, departments do offer funding to international students through the normal TAs and of course, research positions, research appointments. As well, the graduate school has on its website a list of a number of national and international fellowships. So I would direct graduate students to that website to take a look at those. And all of the funding that the graduate school offers, grants, awards, and fellowships, are available to students regardless of their citizenship as well.
And I just wanted to add as well, for COVID-19 related financial matters, the Student Affairs does have COVID-19 grants, sorry, I'm not sure the appropriate word, but funding available. And JB, can you help us direct to the website for that? Do you know where that? If not, we can, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can go to the Dean of Students website, and there's resources there. There's also resources through the Volunteer Resource Center that can also be accessed, but really it's through our Office of the Dean of Students for those specific resources.
And as well, I'd like to, thank you, JB. As well, I'd like to mention that ISSS does have emergency fund grants, but those are for, they're not scholarships, they're more for one-time emergencies, for example, for unexpected medical expenses. Perhaps, God forbid, you have a house fire and you need to replace your stuff, things like that. So they're for one-time expenses, but I just wanted to mention that. And there is information about the ISSS emergency grants on our website.
All right, thank you both. One question that we are getting a lot of, even in just the Q&A today, but it was also pre-submitted. What about traveling? Whether that, let's just start here with, what if folks are looking at traveling over the winter break, and what if they're not able to come back in? Diana, can you give us some information on what we can advise as far as traveling at this point?
Yes, so this, obviously we understand this creates a lot of stress and anxiety for individuals given the current situation with the pandemic and the changing rules about entry and so forth. What we advise is prior to departing the US, you reach out to ISSS either via email or through drop-in advising and tell us about your specific circumstance and where you intend to travel and for how long. If you do encounter a situation where you are unable to unexpectedly return to the US, please reach out to ISSS and we will help try to coordinate with you and advise you on potential options. But please reach out to us in advance. We can't emphasize that enough. And do also look, like I said, on our website under spring 2021. There's travel information about things you should take into consideration. So please, reach out to us in advance. That's the best thing that you can do, because depending on what country you're going to, whether you have a valid visa, about your flight situation, there's various factors that are unique to each person. So we really want to speak to you or have you email us directly so we can assist.
Thank you, Diana. Another question related to work options for students. What are work limitations for graduate students? We think that this is probably pretty specific to the number of hours they can work a week. Diana, do you have a response for that?
So as I mentioned, while school is in session, international students on F1 and J1 visas are limited to 20 hours per week. And as well, during the breaks, whether it be winter vacation or summer vacation, they are able to work up to 40 hours per week on campus. Does that answer the question, Chris? Yes. Okay.
ISSS has a response, but feel free, Dr. Adler or Dr. Banks, if you wanted to jump in. How do I express to my advisor the difficulties of being an international student right now?
I guess I can jump in. I know Scott, you can jump in as well, but I think that one of the things that we've been studying as a university is these type of issues and concerns. And so there has been a number of different focus groups that have been going on. There was also a new student survey that was conducted. I have had some very candid discussions with a number of students during the course of this semester, and they spoke to your concern. And so I appreciate that question of how do you express those concerns. I believe faculty are aware of these concerns. I have been on a number of different conference calls and in a number of different meetings where faculty are finding out ways to address these issues. So I think that that would be a really good conversation, is one that I would encourage you to have with your professor or with your advisor, because I think that we're prepped for it. And there's been, you're not alone is what I'm saying. There have been other students who have talked about the same type of difficulty from moving to working on campus to remote learning. We know that that's a tremendous, tremendous stressor for students. And so I would invite you to have that conversation.
Yeah, and let me just jump in on that. Thanks, JB. We as well in the graduate school are trying to communicate both to departments and down to the faculty as well, the difficulties that international students have had over the last 9 months, and they've been quite prominent in the conversations we have that in the chairs and directors meetings, which are occurring every other week about as well. I meet with all the associate deans in all the colleges, the other leadership in the graduate school. Gretchen and Jenny meet with the graduate program assistants on a weekly basis. And there's a lot of conversation with the units about these difficulties that graduate students are having, particularly international students, with all the various, for the lack of a better word, attacks on international folks, particularly international students in the last few months. We've been trying to sort of deal with each one as they come up, but of course that adds a tremendous amount of stress, as JB was saying. I would very much encourage you, if you're having specific issues, talk to your advisor, talk to your graduate program assistant or the director of graduate studies in your unit. Make sure they're aware of this. They can also direct you to additional resources. If you're not feeling like you're getting information that's useful, come to us. Come to the Dean of Students, ISSS. We're all here for you, and we talk amongst ourselves all the time as well. So we're hearing what you're saying to ISSS or to Student Affairs. So we'll try and coordinate too. So if you're not feeling like you're getting the help that you need, let us know.
Along those same lines, we're getting a lot of questions about, suggestions for support for students, what support is out there for students. One that was here put into the question and answer, what advice does either the Dean of Students or Dean of Graduate Schools have for end of semester stress and coping for international students?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking that. In fact, today in the CUBT, I came out with a Dean of Students advice. And so there are really three keys in that I could certainly offer and mention. Certainly there are our CAPS resources are available, and I want to give that website so that folks are aware of some professional opportunities. They can go to colorado.edu/resources, counseling and psychiatric services. is available to our students. Of course, our student support case management is also another great resource for students. There are a lot of offerings there. And again, contacting our Dean of Students office just in general is another way of sort of us helping to partner with students and quarterback what the needs are and how we can accommodate those needs. So again, CU Boulder is full of resources, but I think the key is contacting the right folks to get you linked up with the right resources that is appropriate for you.
And I would add, I know that in one of our pre-submitted questions, we have looked at those services are available for all students, international and domestic alike, grad and undergrad. So we always encourage our students to look into those resources. And Scott?
One very brief thing to add to all of this. CAPS will be adding some counselors specifically devoted to graduate students. We're going to have one embedded in the graduate school itself, and then several more that will be embedded in the colleges, in the specific colleges, meant specifically for graduate students. I don't know the exact timing on when those hires will happen. I don't know if they've even been, they may have already been started, but it's a great resource that will be specifically devoted to the needs of graduate students, and of course, international graduate students will make up a big part of that.
And I, as well, thank you, Scott and JB. I wanted to emphasize as well that CAPS has providers. There are providers available that are multilingual and multicultural. And so please feel free to reach out to CAPS, or if you're encountering a situation where you're not finding a service in a particular language that you need or would prefer, please let us know at ISSS, and we will communicate directly with CAPS and see if there's a way to accommodate or assist you. But please know that CAPS is working to provide services. They have translated some materials into various languages, and they as well, like I said, there are multicultural and multilingual providers available to you.
And I'll add one more final point, and there's telehealth available, so that those appointments can be remote, and so you can access them pretty quickly.
I'm going to take a question from our real-time questions that are coming in. If an international student is feeling harassed because of their country of origin, who should they talk to? Is this something that we want to, maybe the Dean of Students?
Can you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. If a student is feeling like they're being harassed specifically because of their country of origin, and I mean, I would go even further to say that this could be any kind of harassment, where should the student go?
Yeah, there are a couple of places to land. One would be with the student conduct and conflict resolution, certainly to begin there. And I also have their web information is colorado.edu/SCCR, and that's student conduct and conflict resolution. Certainly you can begin there. The other place, though, is OIEC, our office that works specifically with matters such as this. And then a third option, of course, is to contact my office directly at the deanofstudents.edu, and you could find resources and be able to make those reports, in quick fashion. So, or you can email me directly if you choose to. So there's a number of ways in order to address your complaint.
And as well, thank you, JB. I wanted to add that the Office of Victim Assistance, OVA, Office of Victim Assistance, is also available, and that's a confidential service. And I wanted to emphasize that the Office of Institutional Equity and Compliance, as well, OIEC, is confidential. And a good way to reach out to them or to find out more information is you can go, there's a website for CU Boulder, Don't Ignore It. That's one that I find easy to remember. So you can just Google CU Boulder, don't ignore it, and it will come up with the website, which will help you navigate the resources available to you if you are subject to such harassment. And also, obviously, if the harassment is physical, you should reach out to the CU Police Department as well.
All right, thank you all for that. I wanted to switch gears a little bit because we're getting several questions that were pre-submitted and from the real-time chat about curricular practical training and CPT for our F1 international students. This is a work authorization that ISSS has the ability to process on our end. It's not something that needs to be adjudicated at a federal level. We have been looking at our policy. Diana, do you want to kind of address any concerns that any student has about the ability to use CPT in the future, or kind of address some of the things that we're working on in ISSS?
Yes, thank you, Chris. So as Chris said, curricular practical training, or CPT, is a benefit that is available to students on F1 visas in specific circumstances. And the universities, or the ISSS CPT current protocol will be changing. We are finalizing it to ensure that we're in compliance, to ensure that we're continuing to be in compliance, I should say, with Department of Homeland Security rules, as well to make sure that we're in line with our peer institutions. And curricular practical training has been an area of focus for the federal government in the last year or so. And so we want to make sure and enhance our current protocol so that we are in line with, like as I said, our peer institutions, and as well we ensure we're in compliance with Department of Homeland Security regulations. So we will be coming out with a new protocol and policy that will be released. We'll be announcing it at the beginning of next semester. We're still finalizing it, so therefore it's not available at the moment, but we are reviewing that. So the policy will be effective at the end of spring semester. So for spring semester, the current policy and procedures for the issuance of CPT can be found on our website under the current student tab. So under current students, there's a specific information about our current policy for CPT. So CPT will still be available, but the parameters by which it will be authorized will be altered. And like I said, we'll be releasing detailed information about that at the beginning of next semester.
Thank you, Diana. I know we did get a pre-submitted question also about optional practical training, or OPT. Where should students go if they have specific questions about optional practical training that's either after their degree or while they're still working towards their degree?
Again, I want to emphasize, please drop into one of our advising sessions that we have at various times throughout the day and week. And so you can ask your specific question, because each student's situation is unique. I can't emphasize that enough, because depending on how long you've been in the US and how many programs you've done, and have you had optional practical training in the past, there's so many different factors involved. So please do reach out for us, because that's what ISSS is here for. And if you want to find more general information about optional practical training, that as well is on our website under the current student section.
Thank you, Diana. Switching gears just a little bit, one of our pre-submitted questions, and likewise some themes in our current questions. What programming is the Dean of Students or the Dean of the Graduate School offering specifically for international students? This could be upcoming or even into next semester.
So, yeah, that's a great question. It's not specifically for international students, but it is for all students. And so certainly I welcome the international student voice. I just started a new resource for students called the Dean of Students Leadership and Values Council. And all students are welcome to join that. I'm still recruiting new members. And that that group of students is extremely imperative so that I can understand the student's voice and be able to represent that well at some of the tables that I sit. If you're interested in that, you can go to the Dean of Students at cu.edu, and you will be able to at least report your interest, and then we can see about getting you involved in that opportunity.
From the perspective of the graduate school, we don't have a lot of specific programming for international students that we do on our own. Of course, we partner with ISSS to help them with the programming that they do for international students, specifically geared to graduate students. We do have a lot of international students participate in our professional development and career services, our Grad Plus program and workshops through professional development, and all of that is listed on our website. And of course, we work a lot with the GPSG, the Graduate Student Government, and we'd be interested in hearing either from international students directly or through GPSG. If there's additional programming that the graduate school can help provide, we'd love to hear what suggestions students have. And we could start to work with these various groups, Student Affairs, ISSS, GPSG, to provide that kind of programming in the coming future.
Great, thank you. Here's a question that someone asked that's more of a technical immigration question. So Diana, I think this will be for you. If a student is entering the US for the spring semester, I'm gathering that this would maybe be a new student entering for the spring semester. Are they allowed to enter if they have 3 credits with an in-person component? People have been hearing some problems with immigration at the port of entry with that.
So the current guidance that we have from the Department of Homeland Security is from fall. Now, whether or not the federal government will be issuing additional guidance for spring, we do not know. With the change and the transition in the administration at a federal level, we are unsure whether we will be receiving any additional guidance. So if the federal government does not release any additional guidance, we are going to follow the fall 2020 guidance about COVID-19 that changed the rules and regulations due to the pandemic. So that guidance came directly from the federal government, and we will continue to follow that unless they issue guidance that tells us differently. Under that guidance, as if you are a new student entering the US on an F1 visa, you are required to have some element of in-person studies. It does not define how much in-person studies, so we've been instructing people obviously at least 1 credit of in-person studies. So if you had 3 credit in person, that would be sufficient. If you are a returning student, so you weren't a new student in fall, and or you've been a student here and you're now in your 3rd year of your upperclassmen, you are not required to have any in-person courses. Now, please do email ISSS@colorado.edu if you if you experience difficulty in entering, if your question when you come through at immigration inspection in the airport, please report that to us because that helps us reach out to the federal government field representative that we have and report that to her, and she can help us try to resolve those issues with Customs and Border Protection. So please do report to ISSS@colorado.edu if you are encountering or you encounter difficulties when you're coming through immigration inspection, and you believe that you shouldn't have had any problem.
Thank you, Diana. This was more of a pre-submitted question, but also kind of with the challenges our international students are seeing. For example, there are many students who are outside of the US currently, and trying to take classes online remotely, but of course are in completely different time zones. So what is a 1 p.m. class here ends up being, in the middle of the night across the world. What advice, if any, does anyone have for a student who is just struggling with trying to maintain their academic performance in a class that is just difficult for them to attend while outside of the U.S.?
So I'll take an initial stab at that, and then I'll let Scott or JB chime in. So if you're encountering difficulties with the time that a course is offered because it is at a inconvenient time or middle of the night for you wherever you're located, it's important, the first thing is to reach out to the professor and see if there are any other options available, or to work with your academic advisor to see if there are any other options as well. The university did take this into consideration when they were trying to schedule classes, but know that there are so many different variables that they are having to balance when they're scheduling courses. So it's a very challenging situation, but please know that the professors, I can't emphasize this enough, the professors really are trying to work with international students, especially those outside the country. They know that there are different time zones. So reach out to your professors directly, reach out to the academic advisors. And if you're not getting the response that you would hope to receive, you can reach out to ISSS and we will help you, and we will reach out directly to the professors and or academic advisors for assistance on your behalf. JB or Scott, do you have something to add?
Sure. Thanks, Diana. And I would just echo again the things that you've said. Unfortunately, we're not a university that's sort of set up to be global in terms of its synchronous courses, and we could potentially have students anywhere in the world given our current situation. So it's been very difficult to make those adjustments. But again, reaching out to the faculty in your department, the graduate director, is the best way to make sure that they're aware of the difficulties that you face, either for in a course you're taking or potentially with a teaching assignment, like a TA position. Sometimes there's some flexibility on teaching assignments, either switching you to a class that might have a slightly more convenient time for you to work with, or a different section of a large class. There might be a little more flexibility on that, but making sure that the department that you're in is aware of the difficulties that you have.
Did you want to add anything?
No, I was going to say nothing else to add.
All right. For a student, this was a pre-submitted question. If a student were to go home over the summer, does their insurance carry over? This would be for either grad or undergraduate.
So I'll start with that one. If you have the gold ship insurance, again, the gold ship insurance, that does provide coverage for outside the United States. However, providers outside the US do not coordinate with US insurance, so you have to file the claim with the insurance company on your own. But please reach out to Student Health Insurance. Again, you can go to the Student Health Insurance website and there's contact information there, and as well as information just about your insurance options and what they cover. And Student Health Insurance can help you navigate these questions and answer these questions. And they can also help you with the process of filing a claim or instruct you how to do so if you have questions about that.
Thank you, Diana. One of our pre-submitted questions as well, what is the university doing about the proposed regulation to change the duration of status, or D/S, entry protocol for new or for international students that are here in the US and will be coming to the US? I know this was proposed and was for, you know, open for comment. Many schools did comment. What did we do as a university, Diana, to address that?
Yes, thank you, Chris. So International Student and Scholar Services worked with the CU Federal Relations team to help formulate with CU leadership so that CU leadership could then submit comments. The CU leadership, excuse me, the chancellor submitted a formal comment on behalf of the university opposing implementation of this proposed rule, which would set a end date for the amount of studies, amount of time that students could study in the US instead of being granted the duration of status as they currently are. So the university did submit a formal comment, quite robust comment about that and opposing it. The comments period has now closed and the federal government reviewed the comments. We do not know whether or not that rule will be released, and if it is released, when. We have received no information from the federal government about that. There hasn't been any information even leaked about that. So unfortunately, we don't know whether or not that rule will become final. So at the moment, the current situation has not changed. We will update on our website immediately if a final rule is released. We are hopeful maybe that there will not be a final rule, or if the rule is released, it will be substantially changed. But at this moment, we just don't have that information.
One of our other pre-submitted questions was more about some of the happenings over the summer and some of the stresses that international students were feeling. Specifically during the July crisis, and I might define the crisis as the period of time where we were looking for guidance from the student exchange visitor program. We got guidance. We didn't agree with the initial guidance. And then it took additional time for updated guidance to come out to basically allow our students to stay in the US and attend school remotely, even, you know, during the pandemic. Very, very stressful time. So during that time, some international students felt that they needed more support from ISSS. Is it possible for ISSS to do more to try to reach out to students and have more reoccurring check-in sessions, those kinds of things?
So first, we want to address and acknowledge the fact we understand the anxiety that was caused over the summer by the federal government guidance, which was unexpected, and know that ISSS was advocating both internally and externally in order to try to determine how to best oppose this guidance that we know was extremely negative and would have impacted our students. And we were working diligently with campus leadership to oppose this, to determine how we could oppose this, this guidance. And as well, ISSS, we literally answered hundreds of emails during that period of time. So we apologize if we were unable to respond as quickly as you would have liked. Know that we were working diligently and working long hours trying to answer everyone's concerns. We understand the language was confusing in the guidance. We did our best to try to elaborate based on what we did know and what we didn't know. And so we did, there was much going on behind the scenes, and we apologize if we weren't able to be as transparent or available as you would have liked. Like I said, it was mostly because we were just inundated with inquiries. And so the ISSS team was working as quickly as possible to respond to your inquiries. We have had some virtual events recently, and we've had events to try to create community. We did have a ISSS listening session called Please Tell Us What You Want, What You Really, Really Want. We didn't get many participants showing up. So we ask you that please come tell us, we are trying in this very unprecedented time where we're all functioning remotely to create a community and to have listening, but it requires your participation. So please come to us, whether it be, if you don't feel comfortable, coming via Zoom, feel free to email us, with suggestions, because we're open and listening and trying to create community and create dialogue. But it requires participation. So if you could help us figure out how to bring people together virtually, that would be, we'd be grateful, because that is a challenge, we know, and we know that people have Zoom fatigue. And I don't know, Scott, if you wanted to add anything about the summer and the university response.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yes, we certainly were not very happy with how things unfolded over the summer. That was quite stressful for everyone, and we were scrambling, as Diana was suggesting, to try and get a response. On the sort of legal political front, on the ISSS, the graduate school, even CU Boulder, we are not an entity that can be involved in a legal action. It's actually only the University of Colorado, the entire system is the entity that can be involved in a legal action, and so it was very difficult to coordinate, as you might imagine, with the system and all the other campuses. We learned from that, and which was why you saw a much quicker and I hope a more satisfactory response, as Diana was suggesting, about the duration of status order language that came out. We were able to issue our own statement from the University of Colorado Boulder, signed by our chancellor. Diana and I were both very involved in the crafting of that statement to make sure it was as strong as we possibly could have. My hope, putting on my political scientist hat for a moment, my hope is with the new presidential administration, we're going to see a very different Department of Homeland Security. And I very much hope we will have less of these things to have to deal with, and a dialing back of these difficulties that our international students have faced as a result.
Thank you both for that. One of our submitted questions here today was asking about food pantries and food boxes that are out there and available for students. Can international students partake in that?
Absolutely. They're for any and all students. I mean, the vast majority, if not all, of our programs and services on campus are for all students. And so I don't want our international students or anyone on our campus to feel like they've been excluded in any way. And what that probably tells me is that we probably need to do a different job in how we message what is available to students as resources. But our Volunteer Resource Center is located in the UMC. And so if you go to the first floor, there is the food pantry. And oftentimes during the course of the semester, I think this year we've had at least 3 mobile food pantries that we've given out a number of boxes for students who have some food insecurity. So certainly that resource is available. In fact, we just received some additional dollars to continue to promote that and get more food, get more resources for all students. So certainly it's available.
Thank you, JB. And I did want to emphasize, I don't know if the person who asked this question, they may have been thinking, will it impact my visa status if I go to the food pantry? No. And we encourage you to go to the food banks or pantries and get the resources that you need. It will not impact your visa status.
Thank you both for that. We've actually had several questions about leadership opportunities for our international students across campus. Scott and JB, could you address that maybe for your specific populations?
Yeah, I can step in. Again, going back to what I mentioned before about the 500 plus student organizations that are available. But let's think about it in these terms that, there are leadership opportunities available to learn about leadership in the classroom. There's a leadership major, there's a leadership minor from a theoretical perspective. And then when you start thinking about the application of leadership, there are ways in which those things are playing out as well from a clubs and organizational participation perspective. The other ways in which you can get involved is through some committee work. And I had mentioned the Dean of Student Leadership and Values Council. We have different committees that are represented across the Division of Student Affairs that you could certainly get involved in. And so, again, they're open to all students. We have CUSG. You can get involved as a senator. You can get involved with GPSG with Dr. Adler, and he advises that group. I provide some guidance for CUSG. So again, from a university perspective, there are opportunities to be involved. We're always looking for student input. And so whenever, however you want to get involved, it's available to you.
And I would just add to that, JB just mentioned GPSG, the outstanding leadership with GPSG. It's very active in many different aspects of the university that affect graduate students and particularly international students. They are always looking for students who want to be involved and to help shape their agenda for each year. Certainly international students have jumped up in prominence and the importance of us addressing their issues. They have representatives on many, many campus-wide committees. And of course, we talk with them on a very constant basis, once a month, and then more often than that. So just encouraging students to be involved with GPSG.
Thank you both. One thing that actually we had a request just this morning was to reiterate from the CU Police Department about international student scams. They have been doing a virtual or a social media campaign about this. Oftentimes our international students are victims of scams because a lot of times our students aren't necessarily sure how things work in the US as far as like Social Security Administration or the IRS, things like that. But I encourage you to please look at the CUPD Facebook page, their website, and please, our international students, we don't want you to become a victim of a scam. So just keep that in mind as something that, again, we don't want you to be vulnerable to those kinds of things. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that, but I know that the CU Police Department has made a real push this week about this.
I just wanted to emphasize that it's for international students or international scholars. Please note the US government, the federal government agencies, whether they be Social Security, the Immigration Service, a US government agency will not call you, okay? So if they say they're calling from a US government agency and you're unsure, ask for their name and phone number and say you'll call them back. If it is a scam, they likely won't give you that. If they do give you information, feel free to contact ISSS and then explain to us what they were saying and what they were asking for. And we can work with you and possibly the CUBD to figure out if it's truly the US government, which 99% of the time, the US government will not call you, okay? So please help us so you don't fall victim to these scams.
I know we have one more minute and lots more questions that we could answer. I want to say that we will do our best to post some of these questions on the ISSS website with answers. You can always reach out to us directly, especially for those specific immigration questions, whether that be travel coming up or questions about internships and work eligibility and things like that. Please email us at isss@colorado.edu and we will get to you just as soon as we can. Does anyone else have any final thoughts?
I just wanted to thank you all who participated, the panelists as well as all the participants out there. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And as Chris says, we know that we were unable to get to all the questions that you have. We will respond to them as best as possible on our website. If you have specific questions about your immigration situation or travel or visa, whatever you may have, please reach out to us directly. Again, you'll find our drop-in Zoom advising hours on our front page of our website.
Well, thank you all for participating, and thank you all in the audience for coming today. We do appreciate you, and we look forward to continuing to serve you. Everyone take care and stay safe.